Mr. Fowler, it's all yours.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Thank you all for, I'd like to, first off, thank the man in me for continuing to um, be those that facilitate these great discussions, this great organization on this great platform. And it's very important to me to be honored to have the opportunity to present for this year's virtual session. I've always admired the work that you all are doing. So thank you all for honoring me by giving me an opportunity to participate in this year's session in the new age of our society. So we want to get started right away. My name is Brother Robert Muhammad. I'm a native Austinite, and I've been here in the city of Austin, but approximately 23, 24 years ago, I took on the mindset and a passion for dealing with not only parenthood, but fatherhood. And the reason why is because I started having my own children and wanting and desiring and having a passion to kind of avert or to avoid the way that I was reared so that I could get a different product for my children. I began to study, I began to research, and I began to apply the things that I studied and researched so that I could become a greater father, or for lack of better terms, a better father, but I would say a greater father than my father, because every generation, I believe that every generation should become better and better than the previous generations. And so I've been married for 24 to be 25 years this year. I have 4 wonderful children, and I have not an extreme, but a passionate view on the value of parenthood and family. I'd just like to share with you one of the things, some of the results from the application of the things that I've studied have yielded success in my children to the degree of having a 15 and 14-year-old high school seniors that graduated at 14 and 15 years old, that matriculated through college and graduated with college degrees as teenagers and went into a field of not of study, but went into their careers as teenagers because they had already matriculated through the school system that's provided by our society. And it was because of certain things that we're going to discuss here this morning. So again, I'm your brother. I'm just your brother. The things that you hear here today, I'm not a certified expert. I'm not a divine, you won't hear divine revelation coming from me. I'm an advocate for family. I'm an advocate for parenthood. I'm an advocate for fatherhood. And I think it's a tremendous value. If we're going to change our society, if we're going to change the world, it's going to start with the family. So the subject that we're dealing with today and what we want to talk about for the next few minutes and the next few moments is entitled 10 Crack Commandments. Not necessarily the 10 commandments of fatherhood. I said 10 crack commandments, right? But I meant 10 fatherhood commandments. But the reason I said 10 crack commandments is because growing up as a young man, there was a young man by the name of Biggie Smalls, notorious B.I.G. in the 90s. Many of you may know exactly who I'm talking about, but he had a popular song called the 10 Crack Commandments. And this song was a compilation of experiences that he had in our community growing up in dilapidated parts of New York, Brooklyn in particular, as we all grew up in certain areas, and we had family members that grew up in certain areas where the crack epidemic affected our families or touched some aspect of our families. And so if you weren't dealing, you knew someone that was using. If you weren't using, you knew someone that was dealing, and vice versa. So this became a popular song that was a spinoff of course, of the spiritual commandments that we are given as we grow up in church and we deal with spiritual movements, the 10 commandments. And so I wanted to talk about the value and the importance of certain aspects of fatherhood. So we named this presentation 10 Fatherhood Commandments. I wanted to mention this, brothers and sisters, that I read and I did some research years ago when I was about to get married. There is a book that I read called Prenatal Culture, Creating the Perfect Baby, that went out of print in the early 1900s. And there's some serious science in this book. And I studied a lecture series by Minister Louis Farrakhan called How to Give Birth to a God. In the core of what I studied in this lecture series, what I read and researched in this book was, if we're going to affect society and if we're going to produce a better world, it has to start with the family unit and preparation and bringing in children that would do better than the previous generation. So parents are responsible for some things: properly preparing themselves for parenthood. I said properly preparing themselves for parenthood, arranging proper conditions and environment for rearing children, living properly as regards to rest, food, exercise, and especially mental attitudes and emotional stresses. How else can we be successful at rearing children? And also recognizing that impressions during pregnancy shape the destiny of the offspring for the good or the ill of themselves and the nation as a whole. You know, we live by the creed, or we hear the slogan, it takes a village to raise a child, right? But it also takes a village to destroy one. I'm gonna say that again. It takes a village to raise a child, but it also takes a village to destroy one. In other words, when you see a child that has not reached his or her full potential, it took a village of influence to put them in the situation, in the condition to where they were unable to reach their full potential. The same way when you see a child that has reached their full potential, we say it took a village, and it wasn't just big mama, it wasn't just mom or dad, auntie or the neighbor that helped to contribute to making this child a great one that will have an effect on society. The same thing has happened when you see the murderer. The same thing has happened when you see those that have fallen under the trial of substance abuse and other things. And so I'm a firm believer that none of us, we all need help to do what we do. So I'm gonna read that again. Recognizing the impressions during pregnancy shape the destiny of offsprings for the good or the ill of you and the nation as a whole. Have we ever thought about preparation? Have you ever thought, has anybody ever talked to you about preparation for parenthood or fatherhood in particular? In this society, if you have an idea for a business and you go to the bank or you go to an investor, the first thing that they ask you for is a business plan. And if you don't have a business plan, they won't give you the time of day, and they'll tell you that your idea is doomed to fail because you don't have an adequate plan to ensure the success of your business. Well, one of the most important things you're going to do, and we're going to do in our lives, is give birth to and rear children. Even if you don't give birth to a child biologically, we have children in our environments, and one of the most important things that we're going to do is have an impression, and we're going to train and we're going to teach that child in our environment. And so if we don't properly prepare for one of the most important things in our lives, which is fatherhood, then how can we increase the probability that we're going to be successful at being fathers and rearing children that are going to be greater than us? Yet in our society, we are told that we have to properly plan for the success of business. We have to properly properly prepare and plan for the success of our careers, our education, and many different things in our society. But who prepares us properly for fatherhood? So that's just a question. We have to prepare three-dimensionally. We have to prepare our minds, we have to prepare our body, we have to prepare our spirit, and of course, we have to prepare financially for fatherhood. You know, family, let me say this, that I'm a member of the Nation of Islam, but I'm not here today to proselytize or try and get you to become a member of my faith tradition. What I'm here for is to reason, for us to reason with one another, because we talk about the ills of our society, but the ills of our society come from the thinking in the hands of the members of our society. So if we can combat the thinking, if we can combat and stop it at the thought, then we can prevent or reduce what happens with the hands or the action. And so we're taught in our faith tradition about elements in the universe. We're taught that the planet Earth that we live on, our home planet, is 196,940,000 square miles. We're taught that 57,255,000 square miles of it is land, and 139,685,000 square miles of it is water, and that it rotates on its axis at 1,037 1/3 miles per hour. That's pretty terrific for something that size. But we also taught that sound moves at 1,120 feet per second. But then we also taught that light moves at 186,000 miles per second. These are terrific speeds, right? And when you talk about the terrific speed and you relate it to horsepower in a vehicle, the greater the horsepower, the greater the strength, or the greater the power in the engine of that vehicle. But we're also taught that the fastest moving object in the universe is thought, that travels at on average 24 billion miles per second. So if we relate this to something relatable as far as horsepower in a vehicle, and thought moves faster than anything in our universe, then we have to come to the conclusion that the most powerful thing that we possess are our thoughts or our mind. And how do you increase, and how do you better, and how do you grow your mind except through the acquisition of knowledge? So as a father, we have to be engaged in acquiring knowledge that will help us to become not only better fathers, but better individuals that will help us to become better fathers. So we must research fatherhood. We must research what it takes to become a great father, a good father. And we must be courageous enough to abandon, once we find out that some of the things that our parents did to us, believing that they were doing something for us, is something that we should not hold on to, but we should abandon as adults and give our children a greater understanding of the things that even our parents tried to. And I'll mention a couple of things later, but also body. Now, some of you are probably fitness buffs, but as a father, scientifically, the seed that you emit into your wife or your partner has similar components in its makeup as the fluid that the brain sits in. And so there are some scientists that says that it's made from the same fluid that the brain sits in, which means that at the head of that seed, as it's seeking an egg, there is some intelligence. So, and it also is made up of components that we intake, that we eat, and it's made up of some of the ailments that genetically have been passed down. But some of these ailments, you'll find they're not genetic, but they only are passed down because the culture is the same, the diet is the same, And so these elements are passed down from generation to generation. But my point is this, that if you study horticulture or agriculture, no good farmer would take a bad seed and put a bad seed in bad soil. That farmer would make sure that seed is the correct seed, that seed is of optimum quality, and it would also make sure that the soil that it's going to plant it in to give it nutrients and things of that, so that it can grow the best product in, that it would make sure that that seed is in great condition and that the soil is in great condition. It gets plenty of water and it gets sunlight. That makes sense to everyone? I hope so. And spirit, we understand that we have to have a connection with our creator, or some people say ancestors, some people say higher power, some say the most high, whatever that spiritual realm or existence or being is to you, you have to maintain a connection to that so that you can become a good or a great father. Everybody got that? I hope that's making sense. So we're talking about preparation. So we have to prepare our mind, our bodies, and our spirits. Now, number two, some of this may be difficult for us. Number two is we have to make the proper choice. We just talked about agriculture and a good farmer, right? So a good farmer would not, a farmer that is a master of that particular aspect or particular profession wouldn't put a good seed in bad soil, right? So let me say this. While some of us are looking for that woman of our dreams, we're looking for that one that will bear the seed of our children, or some of us are not looking at all. Probably most of us didn't look. Things happened and we had children, right? We didn't effectively say, let me find the right one. Many of us, some did, but most of us did not. And so, but let me share this, because in our society, there is a war. There is a battle, male against female. I know we see the verses of these old school rappers coming on and putting their catalog up, but there's always been a verses since we've been here in the United States of male against female, and even before then. And you hear many men saying there are no good women out there. Well, let me say this. We are what we attract what we are. Did you hear what I said? We attract what we are. I know we live by the creed that opposites attract, but in the spiritual realm, or in the spiritual realm, or let me say the metaphysical realm, likes attract. So when you deem a thing, or you say you want to accomplish a thing, the universe starts to bring those things to your attention or in your grasp when you want to accomplish something, right? So on a divine level, a metaphysical level, or on a spiritual level, likes attract. Look at the breeding of animals. I know a breeder in Arkansas, Pine Bluff, Arkansas. He breeds Rottweilers. And he told me recently that in Germany, it's against the law to breed certain breeds of dogs with other breeds of dogs. Why? Because when you breed certain breeds of dogs with other dogs, it could do certain things to the dog based on the genetic makeup, or based on the biology of the dog. You know that a thoroughbred horse in breeding produces only a thoroughbred horse. So when we are coming to a choice, we got to understand we are who we attract. And I mean, we attract who we are, but we also got to understand who we are, and we got to develop ourselves in order to attract one that is developing themselves. And I live by the understanding, and I believe that as you develop yourself, there's someone developing themselves, and that the higher power will put you in the right environment where that attraction will take place. So if, as a dog breeder, you only breed certain dogs with certain dogs, and as a horse breeder, you only breed thoroughbreds with thoroughbreds, then how much more important or scientific is it to get a greater being as a human being? How much more important is it to make sure that your mate is absolutely the one that complements you, that can bring out the best in you as they produce for you a greater version of yourself? Now, brothers, we give our seeds to the women in our lives. This is how powerful they are. They take a seed from us that has minimal components to it, but they can take it, and within their womb, they can give it life, form, and bring it into existence. And if they love you, they produce in the seed that you gave them a greater version of yourself. That makes sense? Remember this about the women that we choose, that she is going to reproduce you and I into the future. Now, you and I are not perfect, but we want to, and let me backtrack just a little bit and talk about breeding, because I know some of us may have said, man, you comparing us to animals, man. We ain't no doggone animals, man. That's ridiculous. Well, if you want to produce a professional athlete and you're 5'5", and you know they starting, you can't even, the league won't even take a look at you unless you're a certain build, a certain size, then you don't look for somebody that's 5'5". You look for somebody that fits that height and that build and that profile, right? You don't think, some of us don't think people do that, but people absolutely do that. And so if you're going to produce a mental giant, if you're going to produce somebody that is going to be a great contributor to society, we have to take all of those elements into, so it has to go beyond just she's fine and she looks good and her bosom and her backside and I like the way she was dancing that night, and I don't know how many brothers like these eyelashes, but I never heard a brother say, "Ooh, I like them eyelashes," you know. But nevertheless, understand that our choices are going to give our present day choices are going to give way to a future. And if we prepare ourselves, and if we find and choose the right one, who not is only appealing to the eye, but is also appealing to the mind, to help to reproduce yourself, that you have fallen in love with, and we'll talk about falling in love a little later in the presentation. And I think I'm getting behind, brother. It's already 12 o'clock. Let me speed up. So we got to make the proper choice. Otherwise, we're going to have some difficulty, because understand, fatherhood is a lifetime commitment. It's not a situation where until the child is 18. No, it's a lifetime commitment. And we'll talk about the fallacy of that number 18 in just a second. Also, environment. As a father, what type of environment are you going to put your child in? I grew up in Booker T. Washington projects. My parents struggled, got a little more education, and we went from Booker T. Washington to Springdale Gardens, right across the street from Givens Park. And we used to walk to Sims Elementary. But then they struggled some more, they worked, and then we moved from East Austin to Northeast Austin, and we were under the lower middle class. But it seems like every 5 years or so, my parents were making an improvement to their lives financially to put us in a different environment, right? But the environment in our home was not the best environment conducive to producing the best children. Now, I'm not condemning my parents, and I don't judge them at all. I'm grateful for the upbringing that I got, but I look at everything that they did that in my maturation as a man that I think was flawed, right? And I tried to make sure that my children would get something different and something greater. So what type of environment? Are you going to put them in an environment where you and their mother are always into fights and arguments? Do you put them in an environment after you did all this preparation, after you made the right choice? Do you put them in an environment to where, and you don't work hard enough to where they may get shot down in the neighborhood by a neighbor? Do you put them in an environment in our world where they may be gunned down by police? Do you put them in an environment and in a world where the likelihood that they are called a nigger when they go to school to get education? What type of environment do you put them in? And some of you and I may say, well, I don't have control of that. But no, you absolutely have control of it. So when I researched the civil rights movement and I researched that time period, equity and integration in its concept is great. All people living in peace and harmony. But one of the things that we did was we forced ourselves onto people and into spaces without considering the spaces that we were leaving. So we took economics from our community because we wanted so bad to be accepted by another community, right? And I'm not saying that's right, wrong, or indifferent. What I'm saying is when we make choices, we have to weigh the entire thing, and we have to weigh how fast we should do something, right? That makes sense, right? So what type of environment are we going to put our children in? So you got to prepare an environment for the child, because you do know that environment trumps heredity. Environment trumps heredity. So you can produce a great child physically. How many people do we know as an athletically could have made it to the NBA or could have made it to the NFL or could have did this, that, and the other, but their environment had such a negative effect on them that they were incarcerated, that they fell victim to drugs, or that they didn't get the opportunity, or somebody didn't take the time out with them to help develop them. That makes sense? I hope that makes sense. So preparing a proper environment. Also, as men in our communities, Black men, Latino men, white men, whatever nationality you have, we have all experienced some trauma in our lives. And I know as a Black male, we don't like talking about trauma. We don't like talking about fixing trauma. But one of the things that I did as a father before I became a father, but really more so when I started producing children, is I became to understand that the trauma that I experienced in my life would ill affect my children if I didn't get help. And so, and let me just share something with you. When I had my first child and my wife gave birth to our first child, we were only married a year. And I experienced thoughts of jealousy because I had my wife for an entire year in marriage, a year and a half, 2 years prior to that in courtship, right? And we got married and we produced this beautiful being, but now he's the center of attention and he's taking all of the attention away from me. And I couldn't believe that I felt jealous of my own son. And I knew that it was something in me that needed to be dealt with. And so I began to get counseling and I began to talk to people. And there are many things. Some of us have been abused physically. Some of us have been abused mentally. Some of us have been molested. Some of us we've seen people murdered. We've been incarcerated. We've seen a lot of things. We have to deal with the trauma and we have to get some help so that that pain is not put or is not displayed in our decision-making process in our fatherhood and trying to help our children become greater versions of ourselves. I hope that makes sense. Number 5, we have to have proper relationships with our children's mothers. Too often, the mother talks ill of the father and the father talks ill of the mother, particularly when they're not in a relationship and they're not married. But we have to understand that your child loves their mother. And if your child loves their mother and you speak ill to your child of their mother, what does it do to the quality of love that your child has for you? And you may say, well, my baby loves me. They know daddy, this, and this. My baby loves me. Yes, but your baby also loves their mother. And no one can become between a child and their mother the same way no one can come between a child and their father. So if you speak ill of the one that they love, they begin to have subconscious ill thoughts about you, and it short circuits their ability to fully love you as their father, because you speaking ill about the one that gave birth to them and helped to give them life, and vice versa, of course, but we're talking to fathers. So your relationship with the child's mother affects their love for you. Let me read something really quick. Because one of the things that when I became a father, I vowed that I would never, well, I would try, is I would try not to have heated arguments or fights with my wife in front of my children. Coming from a book that my wife published called Children of the Most High, it says, as a general principle, parents should never get into a heated argument or fight with one another in front of their children. It is very important that the moment couples agree to have children, that they also agree not to argue in front of those children. Children literally worship their parents and love to imitate them, whether their behavior is appropriate or not. This distinction is not drawn, particularly by younger children. No one makes a more indelible impression on children than parents. Parents model both good and bad behavior for their children every single day. There is a Nigerian proverb that states, what the children says, he heard from home. Behavior is not genetic, behavior is learned. And the most influential teachers of behavior are parents. So how important is fatherhood in that element? Yeah, she's bad-mouthing me as a father, but you know what? That's between you and your mother. We're not going to talk about that. We're going to deal with our relationship. That makes sense? I hope it does. Moving right along. As a father, one of the words in the English lexicon, father, is farther, further, or farther, F-A-R-T-H-E-R. A father is supposed to help their offspring to go farther, right? And it's what type of fathers would we be if we didn't want for our children to be greater than us and to go farther than us? There are moments in Little League, or there are moments in school, or there are moments, we always have to celebrate our children, but there are moments where we say, man, that's my boy, that's my daughter, right? But what if your boy, your daughter becomes, their business acumen becomes greater than yours? What if they surpass you in ability, in knowledge and wisdom, and they surpass you? What if, do you feel any jealousy about that? Or do you say, I'm thankful to my God or my creator or the Most High or my ancestors that gave me the wherewithal to get the wisdom to help create a foundation for them so that they could go farther than I did as a father? Everybody all right? Makes sense? So we have to help them plan their future and their career. Do you know that social scientists say that a child can tell you what they're going to be and what they want to be by the age of 6? They should be able to tell you that. But it's based on the environment and the information that we allow into the environment. And so most times we ask children what they want to be. They want to be a doctor, lawyer, fireman, whatever's noble in the society. But if you pay attention to your children, you can see an inclination towards something. And when you see that inclination towards something, you and I as fathers should surround them with the resources that will help them to incline into that ability so they can become what they want to become. Education in that environment. And so let me share this quick thing with you. My wife and I got married. One of the agreements that we had when we got married nearly 25 years ago is that when we started having children, when the children were babies and toddlers, that she wouldn't work, she would stay at home, not just because she wanted to watch As the World Turns. I don't even know if that's still but General Hospital and those types of things, or the Real Housewives of Atlanta and all of that kind of stuff. But she wanted to stay at home with the children so that she could teach them. She could rear them, she could train them. And that meant that her ability to make money was taken off the table at that time period. So it was difficult for me, but it was also difficult for her because our resources would be limited, which meant that the things that we could have was limited. But I came home one day, my oldest son was approximately 3 months old. I want you to listen to me well, 3 months. And she said, I want you to see something. And she spread some flashcards out on the floor. Alphabets, letters 1 through 10. And she would call a letter or a number, and he would crawl over and get the letter or the number and bring it back to her at 3 months old. By the time he was 3, and all of my children, they knew how to read and write. So my children went to kindergarten at the age 3. Are you listening to what I'm saying? Children are ready to learn the moment you're ready to teach them. So the environment that they are in, and because of that, we have to be very specific about what environment we would send them into to further their education. So you have to plan for their future and their career. In the myth of 18, I grew up, I don't know how many you grew up like this, but I grew up, my father told us since I was 5 years old, when you turn 18, boy, you got to get out of my house. You're a man, you got to get out of my house. But let's think about that. At 18, what are you at 18? You don't have any education, really, right? You don't have a career, right? Your ability to earn is not as great as it could be, right? You don't have any money. Quite often, you don't have any credit because you haven't really done anything to earn credit, correct? So why would we put our children out at 18 and they don't even have a foundation under them just yet? They're going to another stage of life. So those days, I believe, and I feel are insufficient for today's time, that we help our children become men and women as fathers and have a firm foundation under them. So when they do walk away from your house, they never have to come back. All right, everybody good? Now, we got 4 more commandments. This one, sparing the rod. You ever heard the term spare the rod, spoil the child? And they say, that's in the Bible. Well, I haven't found that in the Bible. Maybe some of you have, but the scripture I read said, spare the rod. Those who spare the rod hate their children. That's it, depending on what particular version you read. But let's think about this. What does that actually mean? Shepherds used to carry a staff, which is also a rod, right? A rod is also a rule or a ruler. Shepherds use their staff or their rod to guide their sheep and to also protect their sheep, correct? So maybe our understanding of sparing the rod or the rule or that thing that will protect our children is sparing the proper knowledge, sparing the proper example, sparing the proper guidance would spoil the children or would mean that you hate. A rod. A straight line is a ruler. A rule is also a body of knowledge. So before you say, well, my first inclination is to beat the child if they don't do a certain thing, it doesn't necessarily mean that. Right? Now, some of you may disagree, but I'm not here I'm just here to present something to you. So we have to model, we have to teach the right behavior, and we have to model the right behavior. And that increases the probability that our children are going to produce the right behavior. Quality time, the myth of quality time. I'm using that term for a particular reason. I want to read something for you. We argue that unless a parent is abusive or in any way dangerous to the child, then every child actually needs more quantity time over so-called quality time. Why? When quality time is our primary focus, what tends to happen is that the experiences we have with our children are manufactured, not organic. We are playing 30 minutes here or an hour there. The deep conversation is planned. We plan the outing, the book readings, we plan the shopping spree, the laughter, and the excitement is all planned. We consider these prearranged moments of time as being valuable, and they can be, but they are also fleeting. So while the intention is to have a profound and lasting impact, most of our children cannot easily recall the details of many of these moments without the aid of pictures, videos, and paraphernalia. However, they can instantaneously recall whether or not their parents are present during critical milestones, since feelings of neglect tend to linger. So there we talk about quality and quantity, right? We know that the more the time is, it has to be quality and undivided, but this is true, that they don't remember the details, they just remember whether we were there or not. Moving right along, last 2 points. We have to value our children's friends. How many of us grew up and we had friends that our parents said, that boy ain't no good, right? Our father says, that boy ain't no good, that girl is no good. And it made us want to be friends with them more. Anybody remember that? I hope you do. I hope I'm not the only one. But let me read something to you and then we'll move on. Have you ever noticed how happy teens and children are when they are with their friends? Quality friendship plays a pivotal role in boosting happiness, developing self-confidence, and solidifying a sense of belonging. We cannot stop our children from maturing to social beings. So let's promote friendship that encourage healthy lifestyles, habits, academic success, the pursuit of their purposes, and love of God or the Creator. Children are never too young to know the reality of their Creator. So, but we do this by modeling the proper behavior. If our friends are not the friends that help to produce happiness, academic success, business success, and those types of things, what do you think they're going to do when they're choosing friends? Last one, number 10, is love is not an emotion. It is the mother of emotion, but it's also a verb. That when we love a thing, we do for that thing that we love. Love anticipates need. And so if we love our children as fathers, man, she won't let me see him. We got to find a way to not allow the relationship or the lack of relationship with the child's mother, the opportunity afforded to you as a father to be in that child's life. And I know it's difficult, but we got to find a way. And if we were able to bring that child into existence, then that means that the Creator that gave you, that lent you the ability to bring that child in existence, also has in this environment the resources, the wherewithal, the strength, and the knowledge for you to overcome that obstacle. And I'll say this in closing. Again, fatherhood is a lifetime commitment. Our belief is the hierarchy is God, family, nation. And so there's a scripture that says, what would it profit a man to gain the world and lose his soul? Our seed admitted into the womb of our wives, of our significant others, produces a different version of ourselves. What good would it do for us to become successful in any life endeavor and lose our children because we haven't put in the requisite time, haven't given them the requisite knowledge, haven't afforded them the requisite opportunities? So my brothers and sisters, I guess there's some sisters on here, I'm not sure, but thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Man and Me, for allowing me the opportunity to share some of my research. Oh, did it freeze?
Yeah, it looks like Josh might be frozen.
Okay. I don't know if I froze, if
no, you're
my brother
you're
froze.
good. And I can see David Bryant's moving. Does anybody have any questions at all? We also dropped a survey inside of the chat. So if you guys can take care of that for us, that would be great. Anyone have any questions?
I have a question, but it's not a major question, but Mr. Muhammad, I appreciate your time and your knowledge. I was trying to take notes here and there. I did miss a couple of those, like the 7s and 8s, but it's okay if we reach out to you in the Hova app to kind of get some of the things I missed. Plus, I'm answering my own question. This has been recorded, so I can go back later on and retake the things I missed. So excuse my question, because I answered it myself. So I'll go back and watch the video.
Thank you, brother. That was easy for me to answer.
Yeah, I like what you said about in terms of, the sparing the rod, because it's easy for people to think that that's the only way to do it, right? Because maybe that's what we've learned or what have you, and haven't really thought about different ways to connect with our kids. And there's a lot of research that suggests that when that happens, certain things happen with our kids, and good, bad, or indifferent, right? But when we think about the way that we connect with our kids, there's an impression that is left on them if we lean heavily on the rod, the way that people tend to talk about it, you know what I mean? So it's important for us to find other ways to maneuver through situations and help our kids to learn what it is that they need to learn, and acquire the skills or the judgment that they need to maneuver through whatever it is that they're dealing with. And that's our responsibility as fathers,
Yeah, because quite often I see, I'm in education, so I see parents every day, and quite often I see them inclined to that particular understanding being, physical, corporal punishment, but they don't have a structure around their children that will help to reduce the probability of ill or what we call bad behavior. So they curse them, they talk to them harsh, and then they beat them, and that's it. You go back in there and play your game, go out, do whatever, but they don't provide a structure that is conducive to producing the behavior that they want to see.
It looks like we got Banks back.
You got the other me. The other me is stuck over there somewhere. I don't know where he is. Brother Muhammad, I want to say I appreciate what you said. Some very sobering words. And that's the kind of stuff I wish I would have learned a long time ago. And so it's important. Yeah. So it's important to get this kind of stuff out. Because the sooner you start, the better equipped you are, the better off you are. And so it's great that we can have this session recorded so that we can get this in the hands of young brothers. And it's great that you're in the educational field so that you can be giving this kind of information to people, because wish I'd have known some of this stuff a long time ago. But we're gonna do what we can do. I want to encourage everybody that's still here. I'm gonna post it in the chat one more time. This is the summit survey. Listen, I know that when somebody's in the room, you want to talk nice to them and tell them how much you love and appreciate them. And that's what we want to do with Brother Muhammad. We love and appreciate you. But y'all tell the truth on these surveys too.
That's right. That's right.
Y'all tell the truth on these surveys. We want to know. And of course, they're gonna say the same thing because that's how we feel. But yeah, please help us. Tell us what we're doing right. Tell us what we're doing wrong. Tell us how much you love Brother Muhammad, what he had to say, and how much that might have impacted and influenced your life. Yeah, thank y'all so much. We've got 3 more minutes before this session ends. I want to refer everybody back to the Hoover app. We got Saul Paul coming up. He's gonna be doing a live concert. So that's gonna be cool. And then at 1 o'clock, I'm doing a session with my main man Marcus Griggs, and we're basically gonna plagiarize everything Brother Muhammad said. So it's gonna be fresh material, guys. Like y'all never heard.
I took notes.
We're gonna copy everything he said. We're gonna say it again. So if anyone has any lasting thoughts or any last thoughts, y'all are released to go. Again, Brother Muhammad, thank you so much.
Thank you, brother.
Dropping bombs.
Thank all of you. Let's keep up the positive work.
I appreciate you.
All right. Well, gentlemen, we will see y'all at the next stop. Bye-bye. And still recording. Hey, Green. I don't know what this other computer is doing. Is it back? Stop recording. Yes.